Sam, I don't know if I saw you on. I think I saw you on the other day. What was the first thing that you saw? Because I know you like to keep it pretty even keeled.
Yeah, yeah, you were on the field.
It's
I
not
was over on
necessary.
that side. Well, yes, what I'm saying is I saw you, and so um, you were on the field. And
Wow.
what did I see? I think I went down there and watched all the. Initially I watched Dvorak and Butler and Phil Snow all kind of working with the linebackers. I noted that there wasn't a ton of jack linebackers this particular practice. I didn't see Maverick Newton. Maybe he was out there and he was just with a different group. But I didn't see a ton of jack linebackers. I saw quite a few off the ball, whatever you want to call it, linebackers. And kind of looked at the defensive line. Defensive line looks good physically. Obviously, they got to play football, and it's not just looking great, but they look good. And then I watched the one-on-ones between the defensive backs and the receivers for 25 minutes. I mean, it was good to watch. It was helpful. There was a lot of elite competition between the two of them, the two groups, and you got to see what Nebraska is excited about on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed with the defensive backs. Very impressed. I thought they physically looked really good, and I thought the young receivers looked good too. Mills and Mosey. I thought both of them had. Mills needs to come down with the ball, and his coach told him that. But man, he's an impressive player and an impressive athlete.
Sam, let me ask you something because you kind of did it, and I think instinctively because how people normally react. But don't you think we should move on? And I said this last week. I'm like, I'm going to stop couching it. With when you talk about body types and people looking better, we're very quick to have to like put it in perspective. And I think this is just kind of a self revelation for me. Like I'm kind of over having to do that because if guys look fat and frumpy, we would hold it against them. So I think we should be able to say, hey, body types look good without having to apologize for it. Because I do think something that's in their secret sauce is definitely their nutrition and their
Right.
strength staff. Like I clearly think that that is a positive for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think their body tapes look really good. And, I think it's not just how you look, but the
Yeah,
explosiveness of
can you
the athletes.
move?
And that's right. And so that'll be something I'm looking for as well. But yeah, if you took that team and exported it to the Big 12, I think you might say that team was just that roster is maybe the best roster in the Big 12.
Mm.
I mean, I would have a hard time with that. I think at this point we need to be really honest about the separators, and I think Rule's a classy guy, and so he's not going to overdo it. But I think he would be like, "Hey, look, guys, the rosters in the Big 12 and the Big 10 are not even close to the same. Now, you got to go out and beat Cincinnati, right? Got to go do that because that's a Big 12 football team. But they're not close. I mean, they're just there's a vast difference, and Nebraska's roster looks really good. A lot of the other Big Ten rosters do too. I mean, there's more money in the Big Ten, and there's more whatever you want to call it. So at this point, it's no joke.
Sam, I wonder, as you've got a handful of media availabilities over the course of spring practice. Do you have do you have like an agenda? Do you have like a checklist of things you're kind of looking to see, or is it kind of based on what they're doing when they're allowing media in there? I'm always curious about that. Like, if there's do you have like you're trying to check off boxes of things you've seen this spring?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So obviously you're going to go with what they show, and so there's a little bit of both there. You're looking for just roster, the size of guys, how they look, what their body composition, all those things. You watch coaching technique. You watch the way that the guys teach. I thought a couple of years ago I was watching Knighton and his group, Potenza and others. take the defensive line through reps, and I'm like, this is going to be a pretty good group. They're coached in a way that's very aggressive and but also upbeat. There's a little bit of technique in there, but there's also pace to what they're doing. There's nobody's going real slow. So you acknowledge that, you appreciate what you're seeing. Sometimes if I'll go to practice, I'll see what Rhule's doing, although not very much. I'm not there to see.
Okay, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
I'm not there to see what Matt Rhule's doing, because a lot of times what he does is he goes around and he helps with the position groups. But we only get 25, 30 minutes, and Matt Rhule's going to talk each week for 30 minutes. And so I don't know that I can deploy a lot of my energy to what he's doing in the moment. And so that's a decision I make. Now we have 2 or 3 people at practice, so there's usually people who are watching what he's doing. But I'm trying to look at other stuff because, again, sooner or later in a press conference, Matt Rhule's going to kind of tell you things. He has a hard time telling you nothing. I think he feels like he needs to say something and be honest with people. So you can usually get a kernel of what he's thinking from the press conferences. And that's often more than you got from other people. So that's kind of what I'm doing at practice.
You know what else is interesting? See, I'm just the opposite, but now I have to think about it from your vantage point. Because last week I said to Ravi, I'm like, you know what? If I given some truth serum, I may be more interested in watching Coach Rhule interact with the new staff than I am actually watching players. And this was on the heels of him kind of describing veteran leadership and the players knowing where to go and him having to get more familiarize the coaches more. And I think one of his gifts is bringing adults along with him. He's a very good leader in that regard. I kind of would just watch him work just as a cheat sheet, right, on how to interact and deal with people. It was fascinating, and there was no doubt that is his, for all the people that he's employed, that is his football team. And I don't think there's any question about it.
Yeah. No question that he is the head coach and that he commands a certain level of respect. But he also, again, some of the ways in which I note those things is just how he navigates the press conference and conversations we might have. He has a pretty good understanding of all the components of a college football program. And so I think he's able to communicate in a way that makes it clear what his leadership abilities are and how he sort of works with people. And certainly those things matter. I think simultaneously, you try when you can to have a player focus and try to, because those are the guys that have to go out there and do it. And that's kind of where they're at. They've reached the point, in this operation where everybody kind of knows how good they are at a bunch of different things. Now it's more of a question of going out there and doing it.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, we were talking earlier about kind of the current, I would call it love affair that Nebraska fans seem to have with Dana Holgorsen. What is it about Coach Holgorsen that you think people are so enamored by at this point?
Oh, I think he's got kind of a charm to the way that he answers questions. He talks like a lot of people I know and grew up with. He shortens a lot of his sentences, and creates these sort of clever answers that are that probably mirror to some degree how a lot of people I just grew up with talk. And he's able to do that. I think that's part of his, I don't know how to put it, his gift or something. He talks in these sort of short sentences that, drops out nouns and verbs, and, he just creates there's a personality there. And I think people appreciate it. That's somebody, if you were, out and wherever in Nebraska, you'd be like, yeah, I know that guy. That's that guy, And so I think there's an appeal to that. I think his bluntness is refreshing. The ability to come in and speak out loud some of the things that we as reporters, as little as we know, were able to see last year. And certainly Damon had pointed out multiple times before Holgorsen got there. For him to be able to speak that out loud, I think was was good. And honestly, he has, not that Rule doesn't have an expertise on offense, but when you've called plays for 20 to 25 years or however many years it was, you do learn something about how to talk about crispness of play and crispness of execution. That is probably not something that Rule, would know quite as much about. Because the way that Holgorsen calls the game, the way he designs the game is, we're going to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands. We're going to get the balls in the hands of our playmakers, and they need to make plays. And in order for that to happen, you have to shorten the amount of time that, first of all, you're going through the sludge of the play. And then the other thing you need to do is you need to do your job, and you got to execute right. And I think what he's able to say is, hey, guys, if we're going to move the football, somebody's got to make somebody miss. Running backs, we need to get blocks from the receivers. We need those things. And he's able to say it in a way that just kind of cuts to the chase. And I think, again, Nebraskans appreciate that approach.
So let me ask you something, Sam, because I came back after listening to the press conference, and I said this to Ravi on air, not error, AIR, damn it. I'm like, you know what? I kind of liked. It's not that you doubled down. You had a supposition. It started with us during your segment on tempo and number of plays and noticing that there was a rhythm. And I told Ravi the very next morning, I said, one of the things that I appreciated about you going back and getting either proof of concept or whatever it is, you wanted to know kind of where that was going.
Thank you.
Did that answer suffice in terms of, because I kind of knew what you were saying, even real time to me. And we talked about the number of plays. I'm like, I just don't know if they want to play like that. But then you were like, well, when they move with some pace, it was pretty good, and they got into a rhythm, and it kind of forced me to think. I like the fact, is that kind of what that exchange was, where you wanted to know how close you were to how the style of play that you like, or what you think they kind of want to do?
Yeah, the latter.
Okay.
I think you can play a bunch of different ways. And what I would say is that Nebraska actually ranks 5th in the Big Ten in plays per game last year. So they were not. They were very slow the year before. I think they were 12th or 13th out of 14. Any guesses on who ran the fewest plays per game last season?
Michigan.
In the Big Ten? Actually, it was not. It was Purdue. They were so bad that
they never had the ball.
Right. So it was Purdue, then it was Michigan, then it was Iowa. That was the 3 at the bottom. And so anyway, they were quicker last year than I thought, and so that was good to go back and look at that. But the other thing is he didn't quite answer the question right away, and I think they're still trying to figure that out. And I think there's also, again, if you're a North Carolina basketball fan,
yeah.
So Roy Williams, if he had the athletic advantage, which he did about 97% of the time when he was the coach, not now, but when he was the coach. They moved with a pace. They moved up and down the court because they figured we're going to run for 40 minutes, or we're going to move with a certain kind of pace, and we're going to out-athlete the other team. And sooner or later, over the course of the game, they're going to wear out, and we're not, and we're going to win. Creighton kind of plays the same way. Now, sometimes Creighton plays a team like Auburn, and they can't do it because Auburn has great athletes. Michigan State tried the exact same thing yesterday, and it didn't work because Auburn is the most athletic team in the country. And so, sometimes that doesn't work. But, Nebraska will probably play 7 or 8 games next year where, pace-wise, they might be able to overwhelm their opponent. Do they want to try to do that? And how does that affect the defense? And can you slow it down when you need to against a team that might be of equal or greater strength? And those are all things that, you try to put into the soup. And they did move faster with Raiola last year. They did, I think, and I think they have to. Faster than they did with Harburg and Sims, because Raiola can do more. And so I don't know. I don't know that they've completely decided yet based on the answer that I got yesterday. I think it's still a little bit up for grabs.
Sam, is there any part of you that thinks they're a little hesitant to at least publicly lean into the tempo conversation? Because at least in my head, and maybe I'm out on an island here on this one, but when I hear tempo, I often think of pass-heavy offenses. And so I wonder if there's a part of them that's sort of guarding against this idea that, hey, if we talk too much about tempo, it's going to seem like we're not going to run the football.
I couldn't tell you if that's the. I think they're probably just not going to, tip their hand and tell me everything. And the other thing is, I could be way off. Like, it doesn't make, like, what I would do, for example, this is one thing, this is a strong opinion I have. Inside the 10, I wouldn't run tempo. I hate run. I think it doesn't work. I think more often than not, you advantage the defense when you run it inside an opponent's 10, because they don't have as much space to cover. And so reaction, when it's 3rd and goal at the 2 and you're running tempo, well, all they got to do is react. And they don't necessarily have to do a lot because you don't have time to call your fancy play. And so, I don't love it inside the 10. Teams do it all the time anyway. So it doesn't make any difference what I want or think. It's more about why do people make the choices they do, and what are they trying to accomplish? And again, you have one of the more interesting stories to me of this team and of this particular time in the Rule era is Dylan Raiola is probably the most talented quarterback Matt Rule's ever had. And so when you get a talent like that, it changes what you're able to do, and it also changes what you're going to do. And, that's a journey that Rule is, taking. Now, if we could include the NFL, then, Rule had Baker Mayfield. And I think Baker Mayfield's a pretty talented quarterback, personally. But, we're talking about college. He hasn't had a player like Dylan. And so how do you adjust? And that's interesting to me because, again, you don't have Dylan forever. You have him for a short period of time, and you have to maximize that time. You probably have Dylan for 3 years. And what do you do in those 3 years? And how do you put enough on his plate so that you're maximizing his ability? Because if you maximize his ability, then you get another Dylan, his younger brother, or you get someone else who's a blue chip player. And then you can do it again. And that's the story of Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. I don't know that anybody would say that Lincoln Riley's been the greatest head coach of all time, but you know what he did? He was able to attract in a row Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Spencer Rattler, and Caleb Williams. That's why they win games, because they had those players. It wasn't necessarily Riley's play calling brilliance, but it was his ability to get those quarterbacks, and those quarterbacks won a lot of games for him at Oklahoma and USC.
You know what? It's funny listening to you talk about this. I think part of the game within the game is making sure that you allow an uber talented guy to flourish, because he's not, I wouldn't call him a savant. That may be closer to Dayton, because I think Dayton's football IQ is at the same age is probably higher than Dylan's. But Dylan is listen, Sam, I'm telling you. You have to balance, because really good quarterback play can make you lazy as an OC. So I think one of the things that's going to be challenging is for Nebraska to have enough self-awareness to self-scout and to make sure you're not just enamored, but you're doing what you need to do to win games. Because sometimes they could be two different things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's going to be interesting.
What about a good quarterback can make an offensive coordinator lazy?
Because sometimes you just assume he'll make a play. So scheme can get away from you. Where
like he'll bail you out.
Yeah, like he'll bail you out. I saw it with Taylor Martinez. I saw it with Adrian Martinez. I've certainly seen it with like an Anthony Rizak. Let's just go inside zone. Melvin Marcus, Peter Paul. Let him read it one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Or it's almost like what Coach Rule said last year about if they played with 8 in the box, where he's like, we'll beat your brains in.
Mm-hmm.
Because you watch him throw the ball and you just assume that's what's going to happen. You know what I mean? But you still have to have the attention to detail along the way to make sure that you're doing what you need to do to win. That might be the best example.
I agree with that. I think that's a good point. And I actually think that I don't know that I think Rule would get or Holgorsen would get lazy.
Uh-huh.
I think, but I don't think so. I do think it's possible that they could get a little conservative.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the challenges is trying to make sure that you're putting enough on this quarterback's plate. And as it relates to Dayton, obviously Dayton has grown. He's now taller, and looks definitely, like a college quarterback. And he will be very interesting to track this season. Most people have kind of forgotten about him. Like they don't really think about it. Well, he's coming here, but whatever. I think he's going to be very interesting to watch this season, and I think he's probably a little bit better than his recruiting ranking, but it hasn't. Recruiting rankings today aren't probably quite, I don't know if they're quite as dialed in as they were even 5 years ago. It isn't quite as popular as it was because of the portal.
That's an interesting thought. Because there was a long time there, Sam, where you go back like 15 years and it felt like way more of a crapshoot, and it seemed like the recruiting rankings were progressively getting better and better
yes, I agree with you.
As it was easier to get eyeballs on guys. It's interesting that I hadn't really thought about whether or not
it would just be in the last 1 or 2 years. Yeah. And I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. I'm certainly not saying that recruiting people do.
No,
they do an incredible job.
I do think the interest has changed in high school recruiting for sure. I think you've seen a reorientation of some of these experts to the portal. Sure.
Like they now understand that the way that you're operating, and I'm not just talking about the excellent people that work at On3 or 247 or whatever. I'm talking about the people in the industry who are paid, paid to scout, and like really, really sharp people who people that don't have a front facing operation, but they're back behind things. I think now the new thing is to understand the portal. That's why Pat Stewart's there, is to evaluate players who have been at the collegiate level for a while and to then pick and choose just the right guys. And that's an art, So that's what I'm saying is I feel like maybe, there's not quite as much, like I just said, some of the operations have shifted a little bit to the portal side of it. And so what you're doing is you're evaluating the kid who's played at South Dakota State or North Dakota State or Montana, and you're putting your scouting energy into that. Andrew Marshall, I think, is a very well-known player at this point. I think a lot of people could tell you a lot of things about the way he played in the Big Sky. But there may not be quite as much on, a quarterback in Florida or Georgia, just because they've committed. The schools themselves are not sure whether they want to take a high school kid. Those are some of what's Georgia going to do going forward? Is Georgia going to keep taking 5-star quarterbacks, or are they just going to say, we'll go portal it every 2 years? We'll get a 2-year guy, we'll win a Heisman, whatever. That's going to be the challenge going forward.